Welcome back, everyone, to the 161st Street Show. My name is Joe Esposito, your host. Before I dive into today's topics, please like and subscribe this video for more Yankees content. All right, so we're going to start it off with some injury updates coming out of Yankees camp as pitchers and catchers have started to report. Cam Schlittler is currently dealing with back inflammation. He's not going to be throwing off the mound for a few days. They did say that he would still continue to be throwing on flat ground. When asked about it, Cam Schlittler pretty much said he's not concerned about it at all. So something to keep an eye out for. Not too concerned, obviously, at the moment. Obviously, if Cam's not concerned, doesn't sound like there's too much concern on the Yankees end. Not going to make a big deal out of it. So we'll kind of just see where those updates kind of go. Ben Rice, it was reported today that he had a stiff neck from sleeping weird, which is it's funny when professional athletes get to have things happen to them that just normal people have. Like the amount of times I've woken up with a stiff neck from sleeping weird. But anyway, he wasn't able to hit for the last few days. There is some hope that he will be able to hit today. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that as well. From the injury side, in terms of new injuries, that's all that's currently come out of Yankees camp so far since they reported about 3 days ago. Some news since last time I made a video. Paul Goldschmidt has re-signed with the Yankees. I had mentioned in a previous video that, I think bringing back Paul Goldschmidt would make a ton of sense for the team. So I'm happy to see that he's back. I think, he's masters left-handed hitting. I think that some of his inability to hit from, I believe, the stats that I see a lot of people putting on Twitter from June on. Again, this is why you don't look at just counting stats, because I believe he was had like a 200-ish average with not a great slugging percentage. But if you dive into the numbers under the hood, his expected numbers are far better. So again, I will trust that Paul Goldschmidt will hit left-handed pitching until he does. That's kind of where I'm at. There's no signs that he was slowing down last year under the hood, which is all that matters to me. But with the resigning of Paul Goldschmidt, Aaron Boone did mention that Ben Rice could be seeing more reps at catcher. So that kind of makes me think the Yankees might actually go forward with, essentially using Austin Wells as the platoon bat in the situation where he will be the catcher against right-handed pitching, and then against left-handed pitching, Ben Rice will be behind the dish. Paul Goldschmidt will be at first. That's kind of the presumption I'm making based off Aaron Boone's comments. I don't hate that, but I do want to say Austin Wells is a far better defensive catcher than Ben Rice. And there's definitely some drawbacks into having Ben Rice have to focus on, catching duties, learning certain pitchers, making sure, he's ready to go. Probably at least I would assume in the scenario once or twice a week to go behind the plate. So I definitely want to, make sure that Ben Rice is focusing on what we need him to focus on. And frankly, he is the Aaron Judge protection, whether that's hitting in front of him or behind him. He is the Robin to Aaron Judge being Batman. So we need him to be, the hitter that we all think he can be. He greatly underperformed his metrics last year. And even with that, he's still a phenomenal hitter. I think he had about a 125 WRC plus, something in that range. So I'm very excited for Ben Rice again this year. So we'll see what happens there in terms of the platoons and the way they kind of use that. Rafael Montero signed a minor league deal with the Yankees. He's coming off, I would say, I think it's been about 3 poor seasons for him ever since his really, really good 2022 campaign where he was a large part of the Astros bullpen that ended up leading them to a World Series. I like this as a low risk, high floor option, or high ceiling option, I should say. Montero had great underlying numbers, gets a lot of ground balls, gets a lot of whiffs, gets a lot of chases. His biggest issue is by far his walk. He is in the first percentile, so the worst you could possibly be in terms of walk rate. I believe it's somewhere in the 14% mark. If he could just get that down to even, let's say, 11, 10%, where he's probably ranking somewhere in the, 35th percentile, I think he could be a very serviceable arm in the bullpen. He's got some decent velocity. He's got some very interesting pitches. His splitter is, a really, really effective pitch for him. So I definitely would like to see him potentially be an option. I think everyone should keep an eye on in spring training. I think he definitely has a legitimate chance to make the team. So we'll kind of see where that goes. This report came out from John Heyman. The Yankees were apparently talked out of trading for Nick Castellanos prior to his release from the Philadelphia Phillies. It's a little bit of a weird fit for the Yankees. I guess I could kind of see it if they were looking at it as, instead of bringing Paul Goldschmidt back, they take the risk on Castellanos. He wasn't particularly good in 2025, but pretty much every other year of his career, he's been great at least hitting left-handed pitching. So I kind of understand it from that standpoint. They were talked out of it, and the reason they were talked out of it was apparently people close to the team, I guess from previous regimes. I'm gonna take a stab and say, Rob Thompson was a former Yankee bench coach, who's the Philadelphia Phillies manager. Kevin Long was a former hitting coach, and that works with the Phillies and Nick Castellanos. And I have a pretty good indication that those are probably some of the people that were saying, "Hey, this guy's too much of a headache, not worth the hassle." Definitely, I want to say I think I'm happy that they didn't make that move. I don't think, again, he's a very bad defender, had a bad hitting year in 2025. I think I would much rather prefer if it was a Paul Goldschmidt or Nick Castellanos. I think I'm taking Paul Goldschmidt pretty much every time in that scenario, even though Nick Castellanos technically has more position flexibility. Again, he's very bad at every position he plays. So, that's kind of neither here nor there. It came out Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who recently signed with the Boston Red Sox, he said in his introductory press conference with the Red Sox, because he was obviously on the Toronto Blue Jays this past season, he said that the Blue Jays were hoping that they would play the Yankees instead of the Red Sox because they felt the Yankees were essentially an easier team for them to beat. Which, I mean, I'm not really going to say too much on it. I mean, the Blue Jays cleaned the Yankees clock. They beat them in 4 games pretty handily. So you can't really say anything about it. Like Aaron Boone said, he pretty much just leaned to the fact of, oh, IKF said that. That's a little weird because I guess IKF is looked at as, a guy that liked the Yankees, liked his time here. But they're free to see it. They're free to say whatever he wants to say. Like I said, they beat us. It is what it is. Happy he's on the Red Sox, and the Yankees can kind of enact their revenge, maybe spice up the rivalry a little bit. It's always more exciting when, there's within the divisions in baseball. It makes every series feel so exciting. Makes it feel like playoff baseball. So I'm not going to complain about it if it, spices up the rivalry a little bit more than it has been in the past couple of years. Garrett Cole threw his first live bullpen. He was sitting 94 and getting up to 96 on his fastball. Super encouraging. People were getting a little bit ahead of themselves and thinking, oh, is Garrett Cole going to be an option way sooner than we think? He, pumped the brakes on that. He is saying he's progressing well in his rehab. He is sticking with the current timeline, the current timeline for, Tommy John surgeries, 14 to 18 months. That puts him about, end of May, early June return. And that's kind of still what he's insinuating that he's looking at in terms of a target date. So, like I said, super encouraging that, he's able to do this and he's moving and he's progressing. I think Garrett Cole being, the Cy Young Cole that we all remembered pre Tommy John, if there's a way that he can be that again, I think, again, it completely changes, the ceiling of this team. If you have Cy Young, kind of Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Cam Schlittler, hopefully Rodon comes back healthy, and then you have some combination of, Heel, Warren, or Weathers to fill out that fifth spot in the rotation. I mean, that's an incredible cast of arms, high upside. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Another interesting thing is that Garrett Cole broke out a new throwing motion. Normally, he kind of goes from the chest, and said he was kind of going over top with his delivery. He said that is something he plans on bringing into the new season. So excited to see how that works. I guess it is something probably either maybe related to Tommy John. Maybe it takes less tension off his arm, makes him more comfortable, whatever the reason may be. It seems like something that's here to stay, so something definitely to monitor. Aaron Boone gave an update on Carlos Rodon. He was expected. Reports were like around like a early May return. Now Aaron Boone is saying Rodon's not too far behind from the start of the season. So it's super, super encouraging. Glad to hear Rodon's progressing well from his bone spur surgery that he had at the beginning of the offseason. The last big report that we got out of Yankees camp this week, Cashman spoke with the media, and he specifically was asked about Jason Dominguez and kind of what the plan was for him this season. He did say that Jason Dominguez may start the season in AAA because he viewed it as important to get him everyday reps. I can't say I'm surprised by this. Obviously, barring any injuries, of course, that, Dominguez would start the season in AAA. It doesn't really make sense to have him be up there for, to get 1 game a week, maybe a pinch hit opportunity here and there. But even in that scenario, who are you really pinch hitting him for? There's not really like that set guy, like platoon guy that you want to get him out of there against right-handed pitching in the lineup. Maybe, Caballero or Volpe. But again, I think it makes more sense to either, like I said in previous videos, I think it makes a ton of sense to trade him. But if the value isn't making sense right now and no one's really giving you, what they deem as fair return for Jason Dominguez. I do understand holding on to him. You don't want to ship him away for nothing, but it is, unfortunate. I feel like his trade value isn't going to get any better playing AAA. I mean, maybe if he's killing it in AAA and his defense looks a little bit better, but again, I just don't really see the defense taking that dramatic of a jump, and his numbers would really have to be coming off the page. Like he would have to be batting like mid 300, ton of homers, stolen bases, all that. So, we'll definitely see how that goes. But that's all the updates I have for you. That was all the news that came out of Yankees Spring Training since the pitchers and catchers reported this past week. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let's go Yankees, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.